I can confirm that we do have intelligence that different cartels operate in Canada. There's also strong intelligence that Canadians have actually moved to Mexico and South America to facilitate the transport of certain commodities into Canada.
That is the Commissioner of the RCMP, Michael Duhem, today after the federal government officially listed 7 drug cartels and crime groups as terrorist organizations. The United States took the same action yesterday. The move is one of the measures the feds vowed to do earlier this month that led to U.S. President Donald Trump's 30-day reprieve from a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, save for energy, which would have seen a 10% tariff. So where did conversations with Washington on all of that stand? Public Safety Minister David McGuinty is here now. Hi, Minister. Good to see you again. Thank you for making the time.
Hi, Vashi.
I wanted to start off on the listing of these groups as terrorist entities. Do you have specific evidence that these groups are doing illegal things that would warrant that characterization?
The process for listing is conducted by our intelligence and security organizations. They follow a test that's in the criminal code. The threshold is clearly set out, and they have recommended listing based on their evidence, based on the intelligence, and based on the law. They've looked at the situation in Canada, and they've looked at the situation internationally with respect to these 7 groups. And as a result of their advice, we've moved forward and we've listed them.
So what is the order of how it happened, though? Was it that the government asked them to take a look at this vis-a-vis the discussion with President Trump? Because it's, or did this just come out of nowhere?
No, it happens. It's a continuous, evergreen process. They're constantly assessing different groups and different actors to see if they meet the threshold. And in the case of these groups, if you look at the kind of vicious conduct both here and around the world, if you look at what they're doing with respect to human smuggling or drug trading or weapons or murder or the murder and abduction of political figures in different countries, they have made the determination. And they're still assessing. They will be assessing on a constant basis other groups, and they will make recommendations as they see fit.
So I guess I'm just a bit confused, because if this is all coming from the non-political arm of government, why is it coming 2 weeks after Donald Trump, this discussion was agreed, it was agreed to that you would do this? Like, on principle, the tweet that came out from the Prime Minister that day was, we have agreed to list cartels as terrorist entities, and now a few weeks later, that is happening. But you're trying to say that this is just something organically that happened? I'm confused.
No, obviously there's a connection between what our officials do and what we do as members of the cabinet and the government. But right now, it's come to a point now where these actors, using objective criteria, have informed us this is something that we ought to do, and we looked at it, made sure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, because ultimately here, Vashi, this is about keeping our communities safe. And this is why this, as a part of our border plan, is very much about keeping our communities safe. And so it's going to continue. These folks are going to look at other players, other actors in Canadian society. They watch, they monitor, and they recommend.
Would this have happened if Donald Trump didn't threaten to do what he was doing? And I ask because I wonder on behalf of Canadians if this was necessary in order to secure our safety, why wasn't it done earlier?
It's an ongoing process, and 2 months ago today, when I arrived in the portfolio, one of my first briefings was around this question of listing, and I knew they were working on this. Never got briefed beyond the original briefing, told them that when they were ready to go to advise me, and they have. And so if the President and the Prime Minister spoke about this as a salient part of an agreement in order to try and stymie, or to prevent tariffs on both of our economies, we think it's a good thing.
I guess, though, again, on behalf of Canadians, I'm trying to delineate between what is being done to appease Trump and escape tariffs and what is actually being done and is warranted to protect our safety. Because we're also, being told, and the data backs it up, that fentanyl isn't a problem at the Canadian border to the scale that it is anywhere close to at the southern border. In fact, we've been using that in our interviews to push back on American officials. So if it isn't a big deal, why does this need to happen? And should it have happened early? How are we supposed to know this is about our safety versus just appeasing Trump?
A few things on that. Fentanyl is a problem in Canada. Fentanyl is a problem in our communities. Fentanyl is a problem in our healthcare system. Fentanyl is a huge problem in Canada. No, fentanyl, we're not the major source, not even close to being a major source of fentanyl into the United States. So we're going to take steps to address this fentanyl crisis. These measures allow us to go after the money. Really, they allow us to go after the money. They empower law enforcement to track and
you
trace.
didn't need to do that when tens of thousands of people were dying in BC and Alberta 2 years ago?
Well, 2 years ago, I wasn't in this portfolio.
With respect, you weren't, but your party was.
Yeah, it was. But this is also about, as I said to you, a few things. One is it's about Canada, but it's also about, yes, our largest trading partner, ally, commercial partner, neighbor, has indicated concerns about fentanyl, and we've taken action.
I wanted to ask about Mexico because I haven't seen yet a response to necessarily us listing, but the president there has responded to the U.S. listing, and in particular characterizes the action as interference. Have you been in contact with your counterpart or the Prime Minister with his counterpart around doing this? And is it an issue of friction between our two countries right now?
No, I have not been in contact with my counterpart. I don't believe the Prime Minister has been in contact with the President directly on this issue. But let me just remind everybody, we are a sovereign and independent state, and we're taking the steps that we need to take. And we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to rely on the objective advice of our top folks in security and intelligence. And that's what we've done.
What does that mean for the relationship between Canada and Mexico, particularly as we look ahead to the prospect of trilateral trade negotiations, if in fact that is what's underscoring a lot of this? We have Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying kind of, you know, see ya, Mexico, let's go at this on a bilateral basis. The Prime Minister hasn't necessarily agreed with that. What is the view of the federal government? Are we going to be throwing Mexico under the bus, or is there a trilateral deal to be had?
What we won't be doing, and certainly what I won't be doing, is using intemperate language to describe the situation in Mexico. Mexico is facing a lot of its own internal strife and difficulties. We recognize that. We respect that. They are doing what they have to do, what they can do to wrestle some of these challenges to the ground. But as a sovereign country, concerned about what's happening in our communities and our community safety, we're taking our measures. That doesn't mean that we're not dialoguing with our Mexican partners. We will continue to
But you just said you weren't.
No, but that doesn't mean that there aren't officials at GAC or elsewhere that are talking to Mexican folks. On this particular issue, I've not reached out to Mexico, no.
Do you have a view as you know, a member in particular of high standing in the committee, the cabinet committee that is leading the relationship with the U.S. right now, of whether we are going to approach this kind of side by side with Mexico outside of this specific part of things, or whether it's going to be each party for themselves?
Personally, I see this as a multi-party negotiation. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about the dialogue or the language emanating from one place or another. We are laser focused on making sure this border plan gets implemented, and it's making a big difference.
Okay, let me ask you about that. Can you provide Canadians watching tonight with some specifics about, you know, when you say it's making a difference, do you know it's resonating? Has there been explicit confirmation of that from, for example, the border czar, Tom Homan, or anybody in that realm? I know some people haven't yet been confirmed, but people who are acting in their official capacity, like, do we have any assurances that this is meeting the ask of what they have had of us?
What we do know is that what we're doing here is being followed and is understood in the United States.
By Donald Trump?
By the administration. We do know that our ambassador is doing an incredible job at reaching out and engaging different actors, and other cabinet colleagues are doing the same, and I'm doing the same. We do know that the actual measures that we're bringing to bear are having a major difference, making a major impact. We've seen a major decline on a couple of fronts, using Customs and Border Patrol data, for example. We do know that we are seeing the effects of the new equipment, the drones, the infrared technology, the K-9 teams, the helicopters, the cooperation between CBSA and RCMP, our new Joint Strike Force teams between the United States and Canada. There's a whole series of measures. Today's announcement, is another in a series of measures to make sure that law enforcement's got all they need in their toolbox. Has
anyone from the administration told you that what your government is doing is enough for Canada to escape the application of those tariffs?
No, I haven't heard that personally, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We're going to continue implementing, and I'm hoping this evening when we win the hockey game, we're going to be a little gentle.
The last time we spoke a few weeks ago, you had optimism. I think that was the word you used about the possibility of those tariffs not coming. What is your assessment today?
I'm still very optimistic.
Why? I think and I ask genuinely because I think Canadians are feeling pretty worried, right? Especially given the rhetoric.
I understand.
That's out there.
I understand the worry.
What do you base that optimism in?
Operational cooperation, security and intelligence relationships, policy discussions, political outreach, dialogue. Folks are waiting to see how the ball sits down on the green for golfers out there. I don't golf, but they say that. They're waiting to see how that sits down in the White House. But I can tell you that the relationships that we have, that we're cultivating, that we're following, that we're managing in the United States are strong.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Minister, appreciate you making the trip in. Thank you so much.
Go Canada, go.
Go Canada, go. David McGuinty is the Public Safety Minister for this country.